Welcome to a special episode of the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles, Managing Director of B Squared and the host of the Sencast, the podcast for special educational needs and disability. This special episode is part of a series to celebrate the award winners from the 2024 Nasen Awards. In this episode, my guest is Clare Brun from the Holyrood Academy. Clare is an enhanced learning provision teacher, and Clare won the Teacher of the Year award. This award was sponsored by the amazing, wonderful, fun people at TTS. The Nasen Awards, organised by Nasen, celebrate outstanding contributions to the education support of children and young people with SEND. These annual awards recognise individuals, schools and organisations that demonstrate exceptional commitment to inclusive education and the advancement of SEND practices. You will find links in the show notes to find out more about the work Nasen does, their CPD and events. Now, let's get on with the podcast. In this week's show, I am joined by Clare Brun to discuss why she won the Teacher of the Year award. Judges selected Clare's nomination to be shortlisted because of the evidence that she inspires and supports others, which is having a transformative impact on the wider school community. Clare's dedication to supporting colleagues and parents as well as her students is very apparent in her nomination. She addresses barriers and demonstrates that no student is not suited to any subject or concept. She is unerringly positive about her students and inspires colleagues to make people feel that they can and must support others better. Welcome to the show, Clare.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations on winning Teacher of the Year award. You've won an award, so you know what I'm going to ask. What does the recognition mean to you?
The recognition of Teacher of the Year on a personal level was incredibly moving because it's recognition of the provision that we provide here at Holyrood. It's lovely to have the provision recognised, but also it's recognition of how successful the children are doing. And it's great that that success has been recognised, not just for me, but for the school, and most importantly for the children.
One day I'm going to find someone and go, it's all about me. It's always,
Probably.
Everyone's always a very polite, it's all about the team and the whole community. And it is, I think that's why you do it. And it's not, although it is Teacher of the Year, it's not a solo effort, is it?
No, absolutely not. Especially provision that we have here at Holyrood, this was a real team effort setting this up. There were so many people that were involved in it. So it can never just be an award for one person, really. It's one for the whole school.
But although lots of people were involved, somebody did have to lead and take charge and say, we're going to do this. And that was you.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get the job to lead the enhanced learning provision, which for me was a fantastic opportunity that came in a moment at my career when I was looking for something a little bit different. And I've always been passionate about teaching children with special educational needs. And this was an opportunity to really focus on those children. I came from a primary school, one of our feeder primary schools, and I actually moved with some of the students who were coming to Holyrood. So I had the opportunity to work with them again, but just with them, not with a class of 34. So I could really focus on making sure that the curriculum was absolutely right for them. So it was a great opportunity for me in my career as well.
And that was probably quite a unique experience because you knew them from primary school, so you knew what they could do in an environment they were hopefully very comfortable in or used to and have learnt. And then transition to secondary is you probably saw them, although you know them, they were probably quite different.
Yeah, absolutely. And those students are in year 9 now. And they've changed so much. Sometimes they come into the room and I think, who's that speaking? Because they're becoming young adults now. And I've known them since year 5, really, when they were 9. And it's an absolute privilege to see them through their primary years, but also that transition to secondary school and to see how well they're thriving at Holyrood is, for me, is an absolute privilege.
And did you kind of, as they transitioned over, did you see things that they kind of struggled with and went, okay, that's something we've got to work on? Were you able to pick things out like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really quite easy for me because I knew the students so well. That made it much easier. I had students from other feeder primary schools as well. It wasn't just the ones that came with me, but they all had similar needs. And a lot of it was quite quick fixes in the early days. It was easy to say to people, little tweaks that they could try in their lessons that would support those students. And for me, it was when I had them, so I had them for 60% of their curriculum time, I was able to hit the ground running because I'd already taught them. I knew their levels. I knew from their primary school data where they were at and what they needed. So it was a privileged position to be able to start straight away knowing what they needed.
So I was going to ask you, my next question was, how much time do they spend with you and other staff? But you've already given me the exact answer already. So that my question is, obviously you are working with them some of the time. They're out in the rest of the school the rest of the time. And obviously, and I know schools where they have that provision, and it can be a kind of a black and white, great in the provision, absolutely not outside of. How has that kind of challenge been for you?
Yeah, so it was challenging to start with. So they were with me 60% of the time, but we felt it was really important that they were also included, because for it to be fully inclusive, they needed to be with their peers, they needed to be in lessons with mainstream classes and mainstream teachers. And at the start, it was a little bit difficult for them because when they were with me, it was a very small group. They were very supported. And then when they were out in their mainstream lessons, it was much like being back at primary where they were one of maybe 30. And it was a bit more difficult. But actually, we found quite early on that they were able to transition from my provision to mainstream because we kept everything the same. So I went into classes, looked at how we've got quite a structured lesson sort of style here at Holyrood, where we always start with a silent starter. So I would do that in here. I would make sure that the way that we managed behaviour in here was mirroring what was happening in the mainstream. So there were no surprises. So what happened in here also happened out there. So it's really useful for me to go into the mainstream lessons and see how other teachers were doing it. And then I would take that into the enhanced learning provision. And we would have maybe, for example, we do a countdown, 3, 2, 1, silence. So they would know that's the expectation in their mainstream lessons. And I think that helped to make it a lot easier, because I think for a lot of children, but particularly children with SEN, those routines and consistencies really help them. They know what to expect. There's no surprises. Oh, I know when the teacher says that, that's what I have to do. I know when I come into the lesson, these are the resources I need. This is what I need to be doing. And that really helped them then to transition between the lessons they had with me and their mainstream lessons.
That's really that consistency, that certainty really helps, that they kind of, it's going to be here, I'm going to go in. Although I'm in a bigger group and it's a different teacher, actually, as much as possible is constant so that I can just work on those differences rather than being everything different.
Yeah, very much so.
Makes a really big difference having that consistency in classrooms, the structure, the support, all those sorts of things which seem small maybe to others.
Yeah.
Actually, that consistency and that kind of reflecting what's going on in the main school, in the provision, and vice versa really makes a big difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And it's also, I mean, we say this all the time, but what's good for SEN students is good for all students. And it's a bit of a cliche, but it's so true, because all children need that consistency. They like to know what's coming next. We do a lot with them in here about preparing them for their mainstream lessons. So we'll have visual timetables up. We'll talk to them about what the rest of their day looks like. We'll make sure that they're well prepared. They've got all the resources that they need. We'll make sure that they've done their homework and that they are prepared and that they're going to be successful in those lessons. And I would monitor those lessons as well. So I would be sort of checking how their behaviour was in that lesson. If something happened, we would follow that up and have a conversation about, what went wrong there, what can we do to try and put that right. So it's having, although we only have them for 60% of the time, it's having that overview of them all the time and making sure that I sort of do the pastoral side as well.
About to say that requires good communication, and that's one of the things when I've talked to schools around, especially secondary schools around. Some schools are very siloed in their departments, and it makes kind of communication outside or between silos really difficult. So And that's one thing I can imagine it working really well in the provision, but outside of that, communication and that kind of, I'm going to say, wrap-around support that you are there is important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think coming from a primary background where you have the wraparound care of all of your students for every lesson, every break time, every lunch time, you are responsible for them. So if there's an incident at break time as a primary teacher, that came to you. You know, if you were on break duty, you would know about if someone in your class had done something that needed following up. So when I came to secondary, that was quite different for me, because very often you would only see a student for an hour and then you wouldn't see them again maybe until 2 days later. So I naturally just took that overview of those students all of the time, because that's what I did. But I found it's worked for them. It was like they needed someone who sort of had their best interests and just checked in with them regularly, so made sure they had what they needed. And also things like making sure that letters went home, making sure that communication with parents was good, making sure that if there was a trip, that I made sure that they had brought their reply slips in, that they were booked to go on to that trip, so that they were accessing all of the opportunities that the other students were. Things that when they maybe don't have that one person that is their person all the time would get missed.
Yeah. There's that thing, I think, where you were a year ahead, when you're a year ahead in secondary, you're overviewing so many children, but at the same time, you may not even teach any of them. You've just got that responsibility, and you can always come to you, but actually having someone who you see, which is a bit like that form tutor, because you see them each day, that constant, and you can go, okay, that's not right. They're not in the great mood today. What's going on? But again, it's that stepping almost back into a primary teacher role where you're doing the hand-holding and all that stuff, that executive function stuff. Yeah. You're just reminding them, helping them and supporting them in those bits where they struggle, to make sure that they're not missing out. Because a lot of the time when those children struggle with those bits, that's when they maybe get to tensions or they start missing out things, and then that negativity grows and grows.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, working with form tutors was really important as well. So the first year that we set the provision up, the form tutors, we communicated so much, and that was so useful. They would contact me to ask for advice, but also I would go to them and ask for advice because they knew the school, they knew the procedures. And it was interesting things like, how strict should I be with them on homework if they've forgotten their homework? You know, should I, let that go? And the tutors in the first year were absolutely brilliant at being consistent. And I said to them, no, you don't need to let the homework go. The homework has been adapted. It's at the right level for them, same expectations as all the other students. But they would always check in and say, well, should I put them in a support session, or would it be better if they came to you? And to start with, they came to me. And I said, probably better if they come to me. I'll do the homework with them. But then we would discuss again, well, this has been 3 weeks in a row. Do you think I ought to now put them in homework support? And we do it on a child-by-child basis. And that just naturally evolved, that communication. And I would say the students who are now in year 9, they need me less and less. And the form tutors, I would say, communicate less and less because they know them so well now. And all those things that they needed support with in the early days, they don't need that now. And it's lovely to see.
It is that, rather than just having that, from primary, almost like you're kicking them into secondary, because it's such a change. It's like dropping a tadpole into a giant pond. It's that sort of thing. And basically, it's that you've basically done a 2 or 3 year transition for them. That actually a lot of hand holding, and then slowly stepping back until they are confident, because they know they can always come to you, which is that confidence, but they're also probably able to advocate for themselves. They know, actually, these teachers get me, they support me, I can ask them. I don't have to just go back to Mrs. Brun and ask her. Yes. Actually, I can get the support where I need it.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. And for a lot of these children, it was about, and it was trying to sort of encourage staff when they taught these students, because I think initially there was quite some concern about having the ELP students in their lesson. How do I deal with them? How do I manage them? And then very early on, they discovered that actually just building a relationship with these students was the absolute key. And then they would come to me and tell me when they'd had little wins. And I could see that they were feeling what I was feeling, which is how rewarding it is. And these little wins were then sort of motivated them to carry on. And it was little things like, there was an example where one of my students, his banana had burst in his bag and it had gone all over his kit. And the PE teacher had said, don't worry, leave it with me. And he'd washed his kit, he washed his bag and returned it to him. And to that student, that meant everything, because that meant that teacher, he actually said, that teacher's got my back. And I thought it was a lovely, and from then on in, they've had a great relationship, because he's just done that little extra that sort of shows that he really values that student and values how that student feels. And they've got that relationship now with so many staff here who have just gone that little extra step. It's not about providing different work or increasing their workload. It was just about taking a minute to just check in with them and build that relationship.
So basically what you're saying is your work hasn't just been transformational for all those students you're working with, but actually it's helping all the staff see that they aren't children you just stick in the corner. They aren't children who can't. They aren't children who are going to just disrupt your lessons. Often you hear that from kind of those who don't get special needs. Actually, they need a bit of support. And actually, they need to build that trust. And it's that relationship is key. And that's one of that relationship I think people really don't understand. And then they finally get that penny drop moment of, actually, by having that relationship, life works easier. And that's one of the bits where I really think what works for SEN works for all is that relationships. And if actually teachers built more relationships with all of their children, I know it's hard in secondary when you've got teaching 180 odd children a week or whatever many numbers it is. But actually, if you can try and build those relationships, generally everything gets better.
Yeah, absolutely. And the staff here are brilliant. And they were so open-minded to the students coming in, even though, some of these students are working within Key Stage 1. And that's hard as a primary teacher when you're teaching Year 6 and you've got students working at Key Stage 1. But when you're trying to teach a Key Stage 3 curriculum and you've got the pressures of, getting these students to these really high levels while supporting these students working at Key Stage 1, that was quite challenging, really. And the staff here was so fantastic at saying, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do well. They would contact me and say, what can I do? Can you give me some ideas? How can I support them? There wasn't one member of staff here who said, I don't want them in my lesson, I don't know what to do, I can't deal with them. They were so open to it, and that has really helped the success of this provision, just everybody being open-minded. And the relationship thing it's key to what I do. And I've, always believed that you can't teach them if you haven't got a relationship with them. If they're not vested in you, they're not going to listen to what you're saying. And so very often in here, I'll say to them, if they're not ready to learn, just be here, just be in the room with me. Maybe tomorrow we'll do some work. Maybe tomorrow we'll do some learning, but just be here. And if they're here, they're not out causing trouble anywhere else. And actually something is going in, and they learn that being here it's a safe place to be, and there's no pressure. It's just when they're ready, because they're not always ready for learning. Sometimes they might be ready. They just need some time to settle, but just be here, be in the room.
Sometimes people will hear that and go, but they're getting away with not learning. They're not going to learn anything. And what you actually find is if you give them that time to just be present and kind of chill out and do their thing, it won't last for long. It's a short-term thing, and they'll get on with their learning. But if they need it a bit later, it's not like they're going to spend half the time just chilling out and kicking back. It's actually going to be a much smaller percentage of than you realise, because actually by you letting them do that relationship is building. And then they will want to do things, and it means they can talk to you, rely on you, get that support from you. And later on, if they need that time again, you're going, well, they've done all the work. Something's not right today. I'll leave it. And they need that time.
Yeah, they do. And if, obviously if they're disrupting other students, that's a different thing. But if they're in the room and they're just not in that right place just at that moment in time, they still need to be there. They're hearing it. Something is going in. It's better that they're in the room. And part of our provision really is that we try not to ever send them out of the room, because the minute they're out of the room, they're not doing any learning at all. And it's for us, because we see them 60% of the time, we have to maintain a relationship. So we would always have a restorative conversation. If we have had to send them out, or if something has happened, then we would restore that relationship and say, look, this is the reason why I had to send you out. This is a new lesson. Let's have a fresh start. So, and I find those restorative conversations are really important.
So you've talked about what's gone in the provision. You talked about that communication with the rest of the school, the buy-in from all the staff. That didn't just happen. And generally, it can't happen unless that kind of ethos is coming from the top.
Yeah.
So obviously, you've got that buy-in from the head teacher.
Yeah. Our head teacher is hugely passionate about an inclusive school. It was his idea, really, along with the county council, that they would set up this provision. We had this group of students who needed to be educated within their own community. And he wanted to do that here at Holyrood. He wanted Holyrood to be able to provide that provision for those students. We're quite rural here, so if they did go to specialist provision, it would be a taxi drive. It wouldn't be with their friends. It would be probably half an hour in a taxi somewhere. And he wanted Holyrood to be inclusive for all students, so that all students in the community could access this provision. But yeah, he has been absolutely key in setting this up, and he spends a lot of time in this provision. He'll come in and see the students, he'll chat to them, he knows all of them by name. He'll bring visitors in to see the provision, meet the students. And a lot of what we do at Holyrood, all the staff do, is about social mobility. We want our students to feel like they can achieve and they can be successful and they can do whatever they want to do. And that's a real passion, I think, of the whole school.
And I think a conversation I've had with another school is actually, which I never really thought of, but that it sounds such a trivial thing. But if you need that support and you do end up getting in a taxi and going to another school, you miss out on going to the same school as your siblings, as your friends. And that immediately tells you cannot. So a provision in a school, the same school as your siblings, you walk the same route, you wear the same uniform, you talk to them on the way, that there builds confidence. And it just helps them see that they can achieve because they're not being excluded. They're being supported at their level. They will know they're different. They will know that. But they know from all the stuff you talk about that you have their best interest in mind. You want the best for them and you want to help them succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important they feel part of their community. And I don't know they'll ever feel part of their community if they're not part of the school that's in that community.
Yes.
We're quite a big town, but we're the only secondary in the town. So every child that lives in the town would normally come to our school. So when they're out and about, that's who they see. And if they're not at this school, they won't see those people. And seeing them in this school now, you can tell it's the right provision for them. You can tell by the way they move around the school, with the friendships, the way, especially the year 9s who are in their 3rd year now. They're not just existing here, they're absolutely thriving. And our data shows that. So the attendance data for our provision is one of the highest in the school. We're
That's
well
good.
over yeah, absolutely, especially with attendance being a huge issue in secondary schools. Children attend this provision, they're happy at school. We have low data for behaviour issues with these children. They don't have many restarts. They don't have many exclusions or suspensions. And I'm sure that's because their needs are being met. The provision is right. The work is at their level. So it's not a case of, I'm avoiding the work. I'd rather be sent out of the lesson than admit that I can't do this, because the work is at their level. They can do it and they are successful.
I think you talk about valued and needs being met. I think before that, you've touched on before, is that relationship and feeling valued. Before you even get to meeting needs and level of work, actually, do I like this person? Do I feel that they actually want me here? Do I feel actually that sense of belonging comes before all of that, but the sense of belonging means you're going to do all of that as well.
Yes. Yeah. Once they feel like they belong and they feel like they have a place here and they are part of this community, then they feel comfortable and everything else then does fall into place.
And that is amazing. And I'm going to wrap it up there. I could ask you lots of questions for a long time. I hear inclusion. In primary, I think inclusion is easier because you said the primary teacher with them all the time. Secondary school, I think it can be a real challenge unless, it doesn't matter what you would want to do as a provision teacher, it's that head teacher decides on how that relationship between the provision and the rest of the school happens. And I think through that leadership, the ethos and their values, it has taught that school that every child matters, that every child can succeed. And it's not the Senko and the special needs department are seen as the enemy. They are seen as equals, and actually they can really help me. So the fact they reach out to you to ask you questions is phenomenal. Because I know in lots of schools that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, that definitely doesn't happen here. I would say there's the communication between staff when they need help or support. Certainly I've needed help and support coming from primary to a secondary school, and it's been completely different. I've needed to reach out, and there's always been people here to support me. They're an absolutely brilliant team.
That is brilliant. That is amazing. It's nice to hear that there are secondary schools out there where that's working really well. So thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Really enjoyed it. You are welcome. And you'll find links about what Claire's been up to and the provision and how to contact Claire in our show notes as always. And as always, you're going to find those links in the show notes wherever you listen to the podcast or on the Zencast website. So thank you for listening to the show. If you are listening through a platform that allows you to review the podcast or give it a rating, please give it a little review or a little rating and let others know what you think. And if you want to get in touch, let us know your thoughts, suggest topics or anything else, please message us on social media or send an email to hello@thezencast.com. The Nasen Awards, organised by Nasen, celebrate outstanding contributions to education support of children and young people with SEND. These annual awards recognise individuals, schools and organisations that demonstrate exceptional commitment to inclusive education and the advancement of SEND practices. And Nasen is a charitable organisation that supports children and young people with SEND. And Nasen's goals include influencing government policy, providing information, training and resources to support practitioners, and contributing to debate and affecting change to improve outcomes for children and young people. And as well as the links for finding out what Claire's been up to, you will find links to find all about what Nasen does, their CPD, their event, and so on. So all in the show notes. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next time with another episode of the Zencast. It is goodbye from me.
Yeah, thank you very much, and it's goodbye from me as well.
Bye.